Okay, good job. World-class staff and volunteers right there. Really cool, and thanks for the video team putting that together. Well, welcome to Fellowship. So nice to see that you're excited about being here. That's really good. Welcome to Fellowship. It's really good to have you. How are you? Yes, thanks. Seemed to be in a daze there for a minute. I'm glad we're no longer there. Hey, I'm Pastor Jim, and I want you to know we are truly glad each and every one of you is here today. So whether you're here in the big room or you're in one of our 2 platinum seatings, that's right, we had to add a second. Thanks so much for coming. And my apologies for how crowded everything is. We are, working to take care of that in time. Well, I want to start with a question for you. It's a rather pointed question, and the question is this. Why are we here? I mean in this room, not like in the universe, but why are we here today? What are we doing here? Why did you come today? What is it that you came to find or experience? What are we trying to accomplish on Fridays here at the Gloria Hotel? And why are we looking to find another venue where we can have additional services as well and more people can experience this? What is it we're doing? You see, every once or twice a year, we here at Fellowship of the Emirates find it really helpful to pull the car over to the side of the road and ask ourselves the question, where are we going? Does anyone know? It's always good to know where you're going. Reminds me of an old story I heard years ago of the famed British author and agnostic Thomas Huxley. He was on a speaking tour, and I think he was in Dublin, if I remember right. And he was staying in a hotel, and he realized that he was late to get to the next city where he was supposed to speak. So he threw his things in his luggage, and he sent it on to the porter to be put in the carriage outside, and he quickly got ready, and he rushed through the lobby and jumped in the carriage, and thinking that the porter had explained to the driver where he was going, which was to the train station, he yelled at the driver, drive as fast as you can. And so the man whipped the horses and the carriage jerked and off they went. And they were making great time, flying through the streets of Dublin. But having been there before, he realized that they were not going towards the train station. So he called out to the man, do you know where you're going? And the guy, without even looking back, said, no, but I'm driving as fast as I can. So I know, it's not good for churches to be like that, where we're racing along, there's a lot happening, but we have no idea why exactly or where we're heading out. And and for you today, that might be your takeaway today. This is a good time of the year to stop and ask yourself, what am I doing here in Dubai? What am I trying to accomplish? What do I hope will be different next year when I look back and say, wow, it's been a whole year. What has transpired? So today what we want to talk about is why we are here. What is the vision of this particular group called Fellowship of the Emirates? What do we hope to accomplish? And most importantly, we want to answer that question, why did you come today? I love the quote by the humorist and author Mark Twain. He once said, the 2 most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. That's really good. And up until then, we kind of look like that little baby. We're just kind of trying to figure it all out. So I want to share with you how important vision statements are. Now, you probably know this already. But having an idea of where it is you're trying to go and the fact that you've got a vision for getting there. And not only is it just something you do, but you're really passionate about it. I mean, it's not you sitting at work saying, oh, what am I doing here? Well, I'm waiting for lunch, and then I'm going to wait for, 6:30 or 7 or whatever, and then I'm going to eat dinner, and then I'm going to go home, then I'm going to sleep, and then I'm going to come back to work, and I'm going to wait for lunch again. That's not much of a life. A vision is believing that there's something greater, something overriding and more important, and something that's important enough for you to give your life to. Any endeavor or enterprise, if they have a vision, they're likely to be successful. As a matter of fact, if you take the top businesses or companies in the world today, every one of them that is successful enough that we know about it and use their products, I guarantee you it's because somewhere along the line, there were a group of people or an individual who came up with a very clear vision, purpose kind of statement. As a matter of fact, let me give you a little test. Do you mind? Of course you don't. What are you doing the next 30 minutes? Nothing but sitting there. I'm going to give you a little test, okay? I'm going to share with you a vision statement and see if you can guess which international company it comes from, okay? You ready? This first one's easy. You ready? Here we go. To make people happy by providing the finest in entertainment for people of all ages, that is, call it out. What? Disney. That's right, the Disney Company. Well, good, Walt Disney Company. That's exactly been, and that's been something that they, in one form or another, have pursued for ever since Mr. Disney himself. Here's another one. See if you can guess this one. You ready? Affordable solutions for better living. Call it out. IKEA. Wow, who said that? You are really, wow. Well done. That's exactly right. It's the place that every husband hates to go. At least, I don't know, it's me anyway. Maybe I'm speaking. Two places I have told my wife, 42 years we've been married, I'd go with you to the ends of the earth, but I will not go with you to Dragon Mart or IKEA. Oh, my goodness. I hate that place. I feel like I'm trapped, and they want me to buy something to get out. It's like, I'll show you the exit, but only if you buy. A lot of stuff. Anyway, here's another one. How about this one? This is a little touchy-feely one. To share our products with our friends and make the world a little better. Anybody? Sound like, huh? Anybody? I can't hear y'all. I'm getting this. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry, these are old ears. Huh? Anybody? It's a hard one. It's kind of a tree hugger one. If you think tree hugger and the west coast of the U.S., Northwest, it is Starbucks, actually. That was their original slogan. Yeah, exactly. Or as one of my son-in-laws calls it, big bucks, because that's what you spend when you go in there. Here's one. I'll give you an easy one. Okay, everyone will get this one. Are you ready? Here we go. It's the vision statement to put a computer in the hands of every person. Microsoft. No, Microsoft. Steve Jobs just spun in his grave when you said that. No, this is Apple. This is Apple. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I'm sorry. Steve, wherever you are, I'm really sorry. If you're not down there. Wherever you are, Steve, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, it's Apple. Has been as that was theirs from the very beginning. Here's one you'll get to. To be the premier maker of toys today, tomorrow, and forever. I mean, that's grandiose. Who was that? Yes, that's right. I hope you said it. It's Mattel. Mattel said that. Yeah. That's been their purpose statement for a long time. Okay, here's another one. And again, I'm going to give you a couple easy ones here. To be the Earth's most customer-centric company to build a place where people can find and discover anything they want online is? No, Google is not Google. You're not going to find... I tell you, you guys need to go back to your computers. It's been a long time. This is Amazon. Amazon statement. Yeah, to find anything online in order that you can get it, to buy it from them. Notice the A to Z. Really clever little logo they have there. And this one, if you miss this one, I'm going to be really disappointed. You ready? It's this. To fulfill our customers' dreams through the experience of motorcycling is? That's right, Harley Davidson, yeah. Isn't it interesting that such a manly thing is all about dreams? I love that. I think that's cool. So, although women ride as well. And how about this last one? You may not get this one. Let's see if you do. Though someone in the first service did, and I was really impressed. This one is leading the way in the world of business. Anybody? No, not IBM? Huh? Who said that? Really smart lady. That's exactly right. It is FedEx. That's exactly right. Yeah, FedEx. Leading the world, meaning you got to get, in order to start your day, you got to have something on your desk that we've delivered. That's what it says. I actually lived in Memphis when this company began, so it was fascinating to watch it develop. And by the way, look at this logo. They have one of the most interesting logos. Do you see the logo? There's a part of that logo that speaks about what they do. The fact that they fly and they go quickly. It has rapidity involved. Do you see it? It's what? Yeah, it's an arrow. That's exactly. Look at the E and the X, the white space between it. What do you see? It's a hidden arrow. It's a subliminal kind of message. Very, very clever. Yeah. Okay. Let me show you another one that's very clever. See if you can get this one. Okay. Okay, there's no need to come completely apart just because I showed you the arrow. Okay? Can we come back together, please? Wow, what is this? Guys, turning on me here. Okay, I got another one for you, okay? See if you can guess this one. You ready? Here it is. Anybody? 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 Yeah, all right. That's better. Of course, that's right. That is the vision statement of our church, to be a church for people who think they don't like church. That's what we do here on Fridays. That's what we're doing right now. At least I hope it is. At any rate, let me show you the full statement. As a matter of fact, I'd love for you to read this with me so we can kind of get it maybe imprinted in our minds. This is the full-blown statement. Here it is. We want to be, read with me, a church for people who think they don't like church, so we can help people to come to know a God they think they don't need. Tell them about Jesus, train and equip them, and send them back to their home countries to share the gospel. That is what we do here. Yeah, glory to God. Yeah, and so it's a little involved, I know, but we feel like it's got all the different parts. It's got the vision. Vision is something that you're passionate about. It's something that you feel will be an overriding cause or purpose for your life. That you may never fully achieve it, but it's something that you just really burn with. That's the first part. We want to be a church for people who think they don't like church. That's our vision. The purpose is how you accomplish the vision. Okay? The purpose is, or why rather, you accomplish the vision. So we can help people to come to know a God they think they don't need. That's the purpose. We're doing the vision so we can accomplish the purpose. How do we do it? That's the mission. The mission is to tell them about Jesus, train and equip them, send them back to their home countries to spread the word. Vision, purpose, mission, all rolled into one. And what I want to do today is just take a couple of minutes to unpack two of those phrases. We won't have time to do the whole thing. We finish next week. But today I want us to talk about the first part of this vision. So, what does it mean to be a church for people who think they don't like church? What does that mean? Well, let me start by asking you a question that I'm not sure we've ever really asked here at Fellowship of the Emirates in all the years I've been here, and that is, why is it that people think they don't like churches? Why is there such negativity often? You've probably experienced it. Maybe you've got friends, family members perhaps. Maybe you were on holiday recently or even here in Dubai, and you'll say, hey, they say, what are you doing on Friday? We're going to get some people together and go, and you go, well, actually, to be honest with you, on Fridays at 11 o'clock, I go to church. You go, where? It's kind of like, wow. And then you get on the spaceship and you go visit Mars. Well, that must be really fun for you, have a good time with that. And they kind of have this idea that, it's just the worst possible thing you can imagine doing with your free time. It's like, why did you do something? I've heard people say that. Or, is it because, you're guilty over something? What is it that you do that? But in reality, a lot of people, I think, the reason they think that is because they've never really been to a New Testament church. You see, the word church is a very broad term, and it covers a great many things in a great many countries around the world. And there are people who've been to things called churches that have really nothing to do with this book or with the person of Jesus Christ. They're churches that are humanitarian-oriented, are socially oriented. They are maybe, mystically oriented. There's all kinds of things that go on. So maybe they went to a church like that and there was nothing for them. And that's why they think they don't like church. Or another reason, sadly, that I think some people are pretty confident that they don't want to ever go to a church again is because they were hurt or abused by a church. And I tell you, for that, I am truly deeply, personally, as we who are in this church are deeply sorry if that ever happened to you. If you ever went to church, which is not supposed to be a place where you're hurt, instead it's a place where you're supposed to be helped. It's not a place where you should be abused. It's a place where you should be protected and strengthened and loved. And I'll tell you something else. I know that God is angry about that too, and it breaks his heart as well. And the reason I know that is because he tells us. Look at the words of Jesus. This is found in Mark chapter 9. Very clear statement. Whoever causes one of these little ones, and he's talking about, he had used children as an example of all followers. He said we all need to be more like children and with pure faith and pure love, or simple faith, simple love. One who hurts these little ones who believe, if they cause them to stumble, hey, it would be better if a heavy millstone was hung around their neck and they'd be cast in the deepest sea. What's going to happen to those unrepentant abusers, those repetitive abusers? God says, wait till I get my hands on them. It would be better if they were cast into the sea with a millstone around their neck. And what he's talking about, Jesus used the word heavy millstone. He's talking about a millstone like this. This is actually a millstone from the city of Capernaum, which was Jesus' hometown in Galilee. Some of us made a trip to the Holy Land this past spring. We saw this very millstone. And I think historians would tell us this one probably wasn't there at the time of Jesus, but not too long afterwards. It's probably over 1,000 years old and obviously weighs close to a ton, if not more. So you can imagine how enormous this thing would be if it was put around your neck and you were dropped into a deep part of the ocean. Yeah, pretty graphic picture, isn't it? Yeah. Jesus was saying, better this happen to you than God get a hold of you. That's how angry what somebody may have done to you one day makes God. It's tragic. That's not what church is. If you hate church and that happened to you, well, I can understand that. You know, after this first service, I had somebody interesting enough come up to me. It really caught me off guard. I usually don't get caught off guard, but this guy came up and he said, you know, I was abused when I was a boy. And I started immediately to say, oh, well, God, you know, he loves you and he's going to judge you. And he said, and not only that, but I grew up to become an abuser. He said, is there any hope for me? He had a tear in his eye. You know, God can forgive you of anything if you will repent, turn to him, and allow him to change you and make you a new person. And my response was, absolutely, there's hope for you. Absolutely. In Jesus, there's hope for everyone at the cross, even for former abusers. So maybe you were at a church that was not really a New Testament church. Maybe you were at a church where you got hurt. Maybe a third thing is you just went to a church and they just weren't very good at it. Have you ever been? I mean, they were trying to follow the Bible, but they just were really bad. As a matter of fact, apparently a lot of people have had that experience because a poll was done, I think it's been 3 or 4 years ago now. I picked it up online. They asked several thousand people who don't go to church, why don't you go to church? You know what the reasons were? You could probably answer this without me showing you. But the number one reason was church is judgmental. In other words, every time I go there, I feel like somebody's looking down their nose at me. Number two, church is, it's boring, you know. I mean, I've seen some churches, been to churches where, you know, if you ever wanted a good nap, that was the place to go. I mean, they just give me a pillow, you know, I could really had a good time. Another thing about churches, sometimes people feel like churches are very exclusive. In other words, you know, it's like me and my crowd, and, you know, we're here, and what are you doing here? And, oh, you're a guest? Well, don't stay long. You know, it's that kind of attitude. You just feel really negative about that place. Another thing, fourth thing, church that rejects sinners, a lot of people think. You know, you've heard of being homophobic. A lot of people think churches are sinnerophobic. You know, it's like, so the last thing we want is anyone who's a sinner, which doesn't make any sense. That's kind of like a doctor, you know, being in a hospital telling somebody, what are you, sick? Get out of here, you know. It's a hospital. What are you doing in there? It's where you're supposed to if you're sick. So if you're a sinner, guess what? Church is a good place for you to come if it's being a real, true New Testament church. And then this one, and I don't know, we could all probably agree with it. The church is full of, people just like me, hypocrites, But hopefully all 5 of these things are things that are true less and less as we become more and more like Jesus. And these things stop being what people think about the church. Let me share with you a couple of passages upon which this church founds itself. A couple of passages from the New Testament. Can I do that? Let me show you first of all this one. Point is, Jesus never intended the church which bears his name to be like that. He came to start a church which was the complete opposite of that. He wanted the church to be like this, not like that. He wants it to be like this. That's what he wants. Sorry, I had that wrong. That's not this. Bad on the left, good on the right. Okay, sorry. He doesn't want it to be a judgmental, harsh, exclusivistic, bad place where people feel like if I've done something wrong, I can never go. It's like, I have to be good enough to go to church. No. The whole point is that we can't be good enough. Only Jesus is good enough, and he's going to make us like himself. I love that there's actually a church in Florida called Open Arms Church. I think that's a terrific name for that. And so, by the way, just quickly, before I show this passage, I think sometimes there have been those people who have misconstrued over the past few years that our vision statement was somehow trying to put off on other churches, especially churches here in Dubai. And that's absolutely not what we have in mind. Let me say publicly, there are many wonderful churches in Dubai. Some, I'm sure, much better than we are as a church, of doing a better job and reaching people. And so I would encourage you, if you're here today and this is, you kind of checking out churches and you don't like this one and you think, well, this is just not for me, then come to me. I'll pass on the name of several great churches with wonderful pastors that I know personally that I really admire, and they're right here in Dubai. So all we're saying, and yeah, there are some churches in Dubai that don't focus on Jesus or the Bible, and I would encourage you to not go there, but there are countless good ones. So what we're trying to say is, this is what God has called us to focus on. God may call other churches to focus on other things, but we know this is the vision that he's given us. And let me show you a passage on which it's based. First of all, one of the main ones is Matthew chapter 9. Matthew, of course, being the first gospel written by man Matthew, who was a disciple. And Matthew is in this section from about 3 chapters here, is doing something very interesting. He's answering a question that's asked in Matthew chapter 8, which is, what kind of man is this? That's what the disciples are trying to figure out. And so really what Matthew is doing, he's very clever, a smart guy. He was trying to show through a series of events that the kind of man Jesus was more than just a man, but he was God in man. He was a divine man, all God, all man at the same time. And he shows how Jesus, first of all, has power over disease. And in chapter 7, he heals a leper, absolutely radical at the time, unbelievable. He goes to another place and he heals people of other diseases. Finally, he goes to Peter's house and he heals Peter's mother-in-law of a fever. Clearly, only God would heal a mother-in-law. It's that kind of thing. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. Finally, he heals, he's in the house. It's completely packed. And so crowded they came in and they rip open the roof and they let down this man and he heals him. It's so incredible. His healing. Not only does he have power of that, but he has power over nature. Right after that, Jesus goes into the boat with his disciples. He's exhausted, falls asleep. They're on the Sea of Galilee. This enormous storm comes up. These are trained, experienced fishermen. They think they're going to drown. They wake Jesus up. Don't you care that we're about to drown? And Jesus stands up and he says one word. He says, hush. And the storm stops. He had power over nature. Amazing. Who is this man? And then if that were not dramatic enough, when they land in their place, they run into 2 men who have demon-possessed. These are people who are involved with Satan. And they are just absolutely crazed with Satan. And again, Jesus only has to say one word. You know what he says? Be gone. Not a lot of gyrations and, throwing smoke in the air and doing backflips. He just says, be gone. And the demons leave them in. It's amazing. But then if that were not enough, you know what Matthew does? He comes to Matthew, this part of Matthew 9, verse 9, and he shares with us how Jesus has power over the sins of men. That perhaps is the greatest miracle of all, that Jesus can take people just like you and me who are broken, misguided, troubled, confused. Many of us who have been hurt by other things that have happened to us. We've become hardened. We've become rebellious. We've become self-centered. We have absolutely destroyed our lives through bad decisions. And the amazing thing is Jesus can heal us as well. He can heal us of that brokenness. It's phenomenal. And he's going to demonstrate that by calling Matthew to be one of his followers. Look at this. And Jesus went out from there, and he saw a man called Matthew. This is the guy who's writing this. And he was sitting in a tax collector's booth. Now, let me stop a minute. If you've been around the Bible any time at all, you probably know the whole deal between the Jews and the tax collectors in the first century. Basically, what the deal was, tax collectors were absolutely despised. This is a painting from, obviously, the Middle Ages, the 15th century by a Flemish artist. But this artist was famous for his ability to paint faces, and it was almost satirical faces. And here he's painted Matthew and the other tax collectors, and you just can kind of feel the oily, ugly greediness of them, don't you? That's I love this painting. At any rate, at this time, in the time of Jesus in the first century, tax collectors were essentially collaborators, traitors. They had gone to work for the Romans to collect taxes from their own people. And the Romans said, we need such a level of taxes, and anything else you can get's yours. And so these guys would add these heavy tolls on people. And literally, they were getting tremendously rich as they were like leeches sucking money out of their own people. They were considered despicable. They were grouped with all kinds of evil people. They were not welcomed at places of worship. You couldn't go to the synagogue. You weren't supposed to go to the temple. They were unable to give testimony in court because they were considered liars. They made anything they touched unclean. They even made their own families unclean. So not only would you not talk to a tax collector, you wouldn't talk to the kid of a tax collector. You wouldn't let your kids play with them. These people were ostracized. I mean, they were considered the scum of the scum, okay? They were the human traffickers. They were selling drugs to the kindergarten. They are tax collectors. We hate these people, okay? And guess what? That was Matthew's profession. Amazing. Matthew was sitting in the tax collector's booth. He put it like at a crossroads so that anything that came by, he could say, hey, come over here. What's in your wagon? Okay, this is how much you owe me. I mean, it was a racket, friends. And so he was sitting there, and Jesus walks up to him, and what does he say? Follow me. Now, this is also found, by the way, in Mark 2 and Luke 5, one of the few things that's found in all three of the synoptic gospels. And Luke says that Jesus looked at Matthew intently, and then he said, follow me. Now, we don't have the whole story here. I have to believe that Jesus probably maybe had some contact with Matthew earlier. Maybe Matthew saw some of the miracles because Jesus did a lot of them around Capernaum. Maybe he heard some of the teachings, even the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus had given prior to this. We really don't know the whole story. Someday in heaven we'll find it out. But for whatever reason, Matthew had come to the point of desperation. He realized his life, even though he was wealthy and had everything he could materially want, he was bankrupt morally. He was bankrupt spiritually. And he knew that there was something more. And when Jesus looked at him that day and said, follow me, Matthew knew that was the moment of decision. And Mark and Luke both say, and he left everything and followed Jesus. I mean, he literally left the money on the table and he walked out. And then what did he do? Well, again, Matthew doesn't explain it in great detail. He just kind of talks about what happened at the thing. But Mark and Luke both tell us that Matthew decided to throw a big party, no doubt at Jesus' encouragement. And Luke even says that he gave a big party, which means Matthew must have had a big house. And what he did was he invited all of his tax collector friends. Can you imagine that? I mean, this is a den of serpents, okay? This is what this thing is. And who's right there in the middle? But Jesus and his disciples. You can only imagine the disciples swallowing hard. Jesus, are you sure this is what we have to do? Yes, come with me. It's going to be okay. And it says, what's Jesus? And it happened that Jesus was reclining at the table. He wasn't standing up preaching at them. He wasn't going around saying, you guys are worthless. He was reclining at table, smiling, eating, getting to know them. Tell me. So tell me about your family. Tell me about your children. So you're hated. I understand. Okay, well, that must be hard. Yeah. This is Jesus. It's a completely different thing. Absolutely amazing. And when the Pharisees saw this, apparently they're standing outside, going, oh, look at that. That is so evil. That is so evil. Run and tell people there's a lot of evil over here going on. And Jesus saw that. He said to his disciples, why is your teacher eating with tax collectors and sinners? You know how people are. They never want to criticize you to your face. They always want to stab you in your back. They go to the disciples. Why is he doing this? Maybe they called him outside, or maybe a few days later. When Jesus heard what they were saying, he said this. You ready? It is not those who are, what? Healthy who need a physician, but those who are sick. But go and learn what this means. And then he quotes from an Old Testament prophet named Hosea. I desire compassion and not sacrifice. Matter of fact, the full thing that Hosea says there is this: for I desire faithful love more than animal sacrifices. I want to know you more than I want your burnt offerings. Wow, that is so profound. So profound. Hosea, by the way, classic book, 8th century before Christ. Hosea was told to go up to the evil nation of kingdom of Israel and prophesy and speak the words of God's love and forgiveness. Incredible. Actually was told to marry a woman who was going to be incredibly unfaithful to him. She perhaps had been a prostitute, very much she'd been immoral. After she was married to him, she went right back to it. And what does God tell Hosea? He says, forgive her and bring her home. And that essentially is an incredible picture of what God's trying to say through Hosea to these people and what he's saying to us today. And Jesus says to the Pharisees, you guys are missing the whole point of why God was speaking through Hosea. And it's exactly what I'm trying to tell you right now, which is what? I didn't come to call the righteous. I came to call sinners. Wow, absolutely incredible. Just a couple of chapters Earlier, there's a great statement where Jesus says in Luke, I tell you that there will be more joy in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who need no repentance. Why is fellowship all about trying to reach people who've never been to church before, who have lived riotous lives, who are absolutely some of the worst people in Dubai? The reason is why? Because that's what we think Jesus wants us to do, because he certainly modeled that for us. So, point, we at Fellowship are what? We're doing this not because we're better than anybody else. We're doing it because we are tax collectors. Anybody here never sinned? If so, you better scoot out now because we're going to ruin you, okay? Because you're among a bunch of Matthews here. We have all sinned and fallen short of God's impossible standard, and it's only through his death that our sentence of eternal judgment can be taken away. Because of his death, we're forgiven. Therefore, we want to be a church for Matthews. Hey, invite your Matthew friends, okay? Be honest. You don't have to pretend here. You can be real and come and say, hey, man, I was a Matthew this last weekend, and I really need some help. We want to be a church where it's okay to not be okay. So that's who's fellowship. There's another passage I want to quickly share with you before we go, though, and it has to do with that second phrase. We're a church for people who think they don't like church. Why? So that we can help them come to know a God they think they don't need. You see, there's a problem people have, and that is they think the answer to their problems is somehow going to be found in a philosophy, in changing religions, and reading some guru, or somehow health. You know, they're going to go to the health club, and that's going to solve it, or whatever it may be. They're going to go to some, they're going to get another degree. I don't know, change jobs, change cities, change continents. The reality is what? The solution is not there. It's found in God. I love this quote by one of my favorite people of all history, G.K. Chesterton. He once said, anyone who thinks they don't need God either doesn't know God or doesn't know themselves. Think about that for a minute. Yeah, it's really good. There's another wonderful quote, comes from the Bible, from God through King David. And he wrote this in Psalm 14. It's an interesting quote, because you know Psalm 14 is the only psalm that's duplicated in all the psalm tree. Psalm 53 and Psalm 14 are almost identical. I mean, literally, word for word. Such an important message was this, that God thought we needed to hear it twice. Look what David wrote. The Lord looks down from heaven on the children of men to see if there are any who understand, who seek God. They all turn aside. Together they became corrupt. There is none who does good, not even one. What does the Bible teach us? That all of us as human beings, doesn't matter who we are, where we've come from, what country, what color, what nationality, what economic level, what education, we all have the same problem. It is a terminal spiritual condition called sin. We were born with a sin nature, and we will and have sinned. And what we have to do is to seek forgiveness of that sin, or we will experience the ramifications of that sin, which is eternal separation from God. And the good news is that God didn't leave us in this mess, but he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever has faith in him won't experience that eternal separation, but will live forever with God. That is the great message. And look at this passage. This is a story that Jesus told. The thing about Matthew, that really happened. Now Jesus is going to tell us a story to teach a lesson. And this lesson is for people who think they don't need God. It's really interesting. It's a story about one man who realizes he needs God, another man who doesn't think he needs God because he thinks he's too good. Look at this. And so Jesus told this parable to some people who trusted in themselves that they were righteous without God. Okay, two men. Two men went into the temple to pray. One a Pharisee, the religious leaders, the religious establishment, and the other a what? Tax collector. Oh my goodness, what is he doing there? He's not supposed to be in the temple. He can't come in here. Who let him in? Get him out of here. He's a tax collector. It must have been a really bad, slow day in the temple, and there was no one around to get rid of him. So he was a tax collector. And the Pharisee stood and was praying this to himself. Praying to himself, not to God. God, I thank you that I'm not like other people. Swindlers, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I pay tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector was standing some distance away. He wasn't even willing to go down front. He was over in a corner somewhere. He wasn't willing to raise his eyes to heaven. Instead, he was looking down. He was beating his breast in regret and shame. And he was saying, what? God, be merciful to me. And then he doesn't say a sinner. He says what? the sinner. There is no sinner as horrible as me. Do you ever feel that way? Maybe you feel that way today. Maybe you came here today because you are running from something that you have said or done or stolen or snorted or whatever it may be. Maybe you have a past that you are so ashamed of that you fear someone in Dubai will find out and expose you. Listen, I want you to know you came to the right place because many of us have shameful pasts. But we, like this tax collector, understand there's someone who can help us, and it's God. And even though he had, imagine what in this story, this tax collector would have to have gone through just to get in the door. Imagine how desperate he was for God and his forgiveness, how much he knew he needed God. Whereas the Pharisee, he doesn't think he needs God at all. See, we're after both people. We're after the self-righteous. We want them to come and learn they're sinners. We want the sinners to come and learn they're forgiven. This is a wonderful opportunity to be in a church like this. And so what is it? What's the point of it? Jesus said, I tell you, this man, the tax collector, went to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. What's the point? We desire fellowship to be a place where sinners feel welcome, where they can come and discover forgiveness and new life through Christ. You know friends who are sinners? Invite them, would you? Please invite them. We won't make them feel like they're weird. We'll let them know they're among people like themselves. Also, we want doubters and those with questions to come. We believe the answers are in Jesus and the Bible, and we want to let them be able to discover that on their own time. However, one thing you won't find is fellowship is someone who thinks they're better than you or someone who thinks that they have every answer. We are all learning together. Now, let me give you, as I close, a prayer. I usually try to give a prayer every time I talk. It's a prayer that I hope if you struggle, maybe you've never prayed in a long time, maybe you've never prayed at all, and you know exactly how to do it. It can kind of feel weird and odd when I'm talking to the air or the ceiling or whatever. No, God says that he hears our prayers when we come to him in faith. And so here's what I want to give you. It's a prayer that maybe you can pray today, or maybe you can bring your Matthew friend with you and let him know that this is the kind of place this is. Would you bow your heads? I'm going to pray it. If you want to pray it quietly in your heart, you do so, just silently. I'd love to know if you've done this. You can come and tell me later. Here's the prayer. It goes like this. Dear God, I'm one of those doubters. Sometimes I think I need you. Other times, to be honest, I don't think about you at all. Thank you that there's a place like this where I can come and ask questions. Thank you that there are people like this who care and understand. God, if you're real, show me. Give me the faith to believe in you. Help me to figure out who Jesus is. If he is the Savior of the world, I want to know that. Help me, God, to come back to this place next week. Father, I thank you for every person who's here today. I thank you for the people who are going to be coming in the weeks and months ahead. I pray, Lord, that we as a church would never lose the point of the Spear. The point of the Spear for us, you've told us very clearly, is to reach those who have yet to be reached. May we be about that every day with all our heart. Lord, bless everyone who's here today. Encourage them, strengthen them, and let them hear your voice. In Jesus' name we pray and say, amen.